Good morning. Welcome to Bellingham Unitarian Fellowship. I'm Reverend Paul Beckel. All who come in the spirit of goodwill are welcome here, regardless of how you sing or pray or love, regardless of whether or not today you feel exuberant about singing, praying, or even loving. Let's simply be here together in such a spirit that invites all to enter this moment with an open heart.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tom Nicholas, the celebrant for today's service. In this service, we're going to use the words pray and prayer a lot. It's possible that some of you are a bit allergic to these words, which I totally understand. But for the next hour, I invite you to look at this word prayer with fresh eyes, as if for the first time. When you do that, when you imagine looking at the word prayer for the first time with fresh eyes, what do you see? As Paul lights the chalice, let's read together these words that were written by Kathleen McTeague. May the light around us guide our footsteps fast to the best and most righteous that we seek. May the darkness around us nurture our dreams, rest so that we may give ourselves to the work of our world. Let us seek to remember the wholeness of our lives, of light and shadow in this great and astonishing dance in which we move. That last part really gets me, this great and astonishing dance in which we move. And now, please join me in reading our covenant. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service gives it life. Celebrating our diversity and joined by a quest for truth, we work for peace and honor all creation. This is our covenant. Now for the opening song, we're going to do, oh, I'm sorry.
There you go. I just have to tell you a story. So this is a song that we've sung many times here in English, but today we're going to be learning a verse in Spanish. I have a limited ability to speak Spanish. In my previous congregation, I once decided to teach this, sing it, teach it a cappella without any help. And I tried all week to memorize it, but at the last minute I lost my nerve and I was just clinging to the paper and I botched it all up. So, that night, as I was singing my 7-year-old, Ben, to sleep, I just started spontaneously singing. Unidos en el misterio de Dios. There, I botched it again. But in any case, unidos en el misterio. Thank you. Yeah, he's going to teach it later. Anyway, the point is, see, it's all of you now. If you were all just falling asleep, this would probably work. Anyway, so I sang it right. And Ben said to me, "Gee, Dad, it works a lot better when you're not holding the paper." So, I'm going to invite you to come today to this song, to the whole bit, with a sense of just letting go, absorbing it, letting it come out of your mouth. If you skip a syllable here and there, that's fine. In fact, it's easier, whether you're singing in English or Spanish, sometimes to just skip a syllable and just keep going. So, Ben, you want to teach him the song?
Sure. Well, it starts here. Unidos en. Your turn.
Unidos en
El misterio de la hora.
el misterio de la hora.
Unidos ya.
Unidos ya
En un gran cuerpo.
en un gran cuerpo.
Unidos ya.
Unidos ya
En lucha triunfadora.
en la lucha triunfadora.
Espíritu ven.
Espíritu ven. Okay, he trusts us. So let's stand together. We're going to sing it once in English, twice in Spanish, and then once in English again. Hey, Ben, how about you come use the microphone?
I'll just give them right now. He asked me if I wanted the words. I just put them in front of me. Yeah. So we'll sing the first, like Paul said, in English, twice in Spanish, and then finish in English. Pum, 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 pum. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour. Gathered here in one strong body. Gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near. Unidos en el misterio de la hora. Unidos ya en
littles and bigs, called Old Turtle. Now, this is a book about the world and all of its animals and rocks and trees and people. And it's about the wind and the stars and the rain, all of it. So, imagine if all of the animals and the rocks and the people and the wind and the rain, they all started arguing with each other about how to describe this, all of them all together, all of us all together. They all had different ways of saying how they experienced the world. And they wanted everybody to experience it their own way and talk about it in their own way. So in this book, all the animals and the stars and the wind and the birds and the people, they all use the same word to talk about this. They use the word God. But then bad things start to happen because they can't agree on how to describe that. Until in the end, well, you'll see, in the end, they figure out that all of this includes you and you and you and me and the wind and the rain and the stars and the whales and so forth. So, once, long, long ago, yet somehow not so very long, when all of the animals and rocks and winds and waters and trees and birds and fish and all the beings in the world could speak, all of those things could speak, and they could understand each other. There began an argument. It began softly at first, quiet as the first breeze that whispered, "He is a wind who is never still." Quiet as the stone who answered, "He is a great rock that never moves." Gentle as the mountain that rumbled, "God is a snowy peak high above the clouds." And the fish in the ocean that answered, "God is a swimmer in the dark blue depths of the sea." "No," said the star, "God is a twinkling and shining far, far away." "No," replied the ant, "God is a sound and a smell and a feeling who is very, very close." "God," insisted the antelope, "is a runner, swift and free, who loves to leap and race with the wind." "She's a great tree," murmured the willow, "a part of the world always growing and always giving." "You are wrong," argued the island. "God is separate and apart. God is like the shining sun, far above all things," added the blue sky. "No, he is a river who flows through the very heart of things," thundered the waterfall. "She is a hunter," roared the lion. "God is gentle," chirped the robin. "He is powerful," growled the bear. And the argument grew louder and louder and louder until, anybody can read that up there? Stop! A new voice spoke. It rumbled loudly like thunder, and it whispered softly like butterfly sneezes. The voice seemed to come from, Old Turtle. Old Turtle hardly ever said anything, and certainly never argued about God. But now, Old Turtle began to speak. "God is indeed deep," she said to the fish in the sea, "and much higher than high," she told the mountains. "He is swift and free as the wind and still as solid as a great rock," she said to the breezes and the stones. "She is the life of the world," Turtle said to the willow, "always close by, yet beyond the farthest twinkling star. God is gentle and powerful, above all things and within all things. God is all that we dream of and all that we seek, said Old Turtle, all that we come from and all we can find. Now, Old Turtle had never said so many words before. All the beings of the world were surprised and they became quiet. But Old Turtle had one more thing to say. There will soon be a new family of beings in the world, she said, and they will be strange and wonderful. They will be reminders of all that God is. They will come in many colors and shapes with different faces and different ways of speaking. Their thoughts will soar to the stars, but their feet will walk on the earth. They will possess many powers. They'll be strong, yet tender. A message of love from God to the earth, and a prayer from the earth back to God. And the people came. Look at them all. They just kept coming and coming. Look at them all. They're so beautiful. But, the people forgot. They forgot that they were a message of love and a prayer for the earth. And they began to argue about who knew God and who did not, and where God was and was not, and whether God was or was not. And often the people misused their powers and hurt one another or killed one another. And they hurt the earth until finally even the forests began to die, and the rivers and the oceans and the plants and the animals, because the people could not remember who they were or where God was. Until one day there came a voice like the growling of thunder, but as soft as butterfly sneezes. And what did that voice say? Stop! The voice seemed to come from the mountain. It's not Old Turtle talking now. It's back to those who were talking in the beginning. The mountain who rumbled, sometimes I see God swimming in the dark blue depths of the sea. Remember, the mountain was arguing before about how God was high up in the mountain, but now the mountain sees in the fish. And from the ocean who sighed, he is often among the snow-capped peaks. And from the stone who said, I sometimes feel her breath as she blows by. And from the breeze who whispered, I feel his still presence dance among the rocks. Now everybody's acknowledging each other's perspective, other ways of seeing the world. And the star declared God is very close. And the island, remember the island used to think of everything was supposed to be far away from each other? The island said his love touches everything. And then, after a long, lonesome, scary time, the people listened to the earth and the animals, and they began to hear and to see God in one another and in the beauty of all the earth. And Old Turtle smiled, and so did God. And that's the end of today's story. And when you go up to your classrooms, I want you to see in each other all the beauty and the hope and the love that each of you carry. And keep building it up, because you can give it back to some of us out here, because we all need some of that in our lives. So go for it. How's it begin? We hold you in our love as you go. to see a lot of new faces today. I got to meet a few of you beforehand, and I hope to meet a bunch more afterward. Please come introduce yourself to me and to the world. You belong here, and we belong to you, and we're all going to have coffee downstairs afterward, just out that door and down the stairs. There's also going to be a building tour today, if you want to know your way around. Who's doing the building tour? It is Gail. Stand up. Go back in the back to hang around Gail for a minute at the end, and she will take you through, because we want you to know how to get around, so you know that you're welcome in all the different things that are going on here. Next week, we'll also have a potluck lunch. Now, I always say in announcing the potluck lunch that there will be more than enough, so don't make me a liar. Tomorrow, we will have a active shooter information, not a drill exactly, but we're having a police officer come here and talk about how we should respond in such a situation. And the timing is somewhat unfortunate. We're not just responding to the immediate concerns we all have, but this has been planned for months, because this has just been growing. We've been beefing up our security here as incidents in churches and schools have sadly increased over decades now. So what time is that? Somebody? Thank you. 4 o'clock, just come in the front door. I don't know where we're meeting, either here or downstairs, but thank you. Okay. Okay, 4 o'clock here tomorrow. We need one another. Okay, and now Jeff.
Cast your mind back 8 years. On the 1st of November 2016, the little company I was working for was in the process of trying to commit corporate suicide and laid off the entire advanced project team, including me. And I turned to Mike and Steve and the other Mike and Kerry, all members of the men's group at Northlake Unitarian Universalist Church, to figure out what my next steps were. Men who I loved and whose counsel I trusted. And by the following Saturday, when we had our regular Saturday morning breakfast, I had pretty much figured out what I was going to do, what my next steps were. And I was able to say, well, nothing else weird can happen this November, right? 2 years ago, September 2022, my mom died. And I turned for solace and counsel to men who I love and who I trust. To Ron and Mark and Haven and Oshko, members of the men's group here at Buff. And they provided the sympathy and guidance I needed to navigate that difficult time. The men's group here is a covenant group and a chalice circle and a care team. And we check in with each other. We have a discussion topic. We learn about each other. Sometimes we even squeeze out a little insight. We try and avoid politics and sports. Hard as that may be. And gentlemen, you are welcome to join us. We meet about every other week up in the conference room. Come and talk to me at conference hour, or come and talk to me at coffee hour. And if you're on Zoom, send me a note and chat and we can connect. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jeff. So it would be silly today to pray for rain. And it would be silly today to pray for it not to rain. Prayer, simply put, is a matter of seeing, hearing, or naming what is from our own perspective, acknowledging how what is impacting us at the moment, and reminding ourselves of our personal commitments so that we can bring ourselves to the moment authentically and with an open heart. There are countless variations, of course, and countless names for this process, or attitude, or whatever you want to call it. Most commonly, the weather today is referred to as gloomy, miserable, a harbinger of unpleasant days ahead. It just so happens that for many of us, from our perspective, this is the state of the world. We feel that in our bones. Well, today we're going to be looking at a variety of ways to see and hear, express, confront what is, to acknowledge how this is impacting us, and to remind ourselves of our personal commitments, our loves, our principles, whatever it is that we bring to this moment, so that we can be here, now, open-hearted. Not just here and now, but here, now, open-hearted. Whatever you call that. Brene Brown this week wrote about microdosing on hope. When things look bleak, we can't just tell ourselves to hope. Be hopeful, unlimited hope. Microdosing, however, what might help you, even for a moment, here or there, to open yourself to a microdose of hope? And then another, and then another. Photography, dance, singing, listening to the seemingly mournful sounds of the whales, journaling, poetry, silence, noticing, and caring for one another. All of these done mindfully, I believe, can open our hearts, give us a little microdose of hope. So whether you use the particular word, prayer, or not is unimportant. But it would be silly, even harmful, to suggest that people who enter this process or this attitude, who use other methods than we do, or other words, are harbingers of unpleasant days ahead. No, we are one with one and all, regardless of the words, when we open our hearts, bring ourselves, express what we see what we see, bring our loves, our commitments to that, so that we can see where it goes from there.
I have to say that I have a hard time articulating exactly what I think prayer is, or why I think it holds meaning. But I do think prayer can be meaningful, and I do want to hold a place for it in my life. People often speak of praying to a higher being. I don't think of prayer that way, because to me, life is essentially mysterious. I don't have absolute faith in the existence of a higher being. The word for, which is also often linked to the word prayer, fits better with my own personal understanding of what it means to pray. But often, I think, when we say we are praying for someone, we mean that they are facing a problem of some kind, and we want the problem to be solved. Maybe they have been diagnosed with cancer. Maybe a close friend of theirs has died. Maybe they are going through a divorce. I can certainly understand praying for someone in that way, but today I want to turn the meaning a little bit. I want to think of praying for someone as just holding their life in mind for a moment. Just holding their life. Not saying, I hope their life moves in such and such a direction, or I want such and such a thing to happen to them. Just holding them. Poetry can be a vehicle for that. I'm going to read a poem by William Stafford. The text of the poem is in the order of service. And in this poem, he holds the lives of people living in a country that his own country is at war with. He was a conscientious objector during World War II, so I'm sure he was thinking in his mind as he wrote the poem of countries that America was at war with in World War II. But I think that we can also apply what he says to people in our own country that we sometimes feel we are at war with. For the unknown enemy. This monument is for the unknown good in our enemies. Like a picture, their life began to appear. They gathered at home in the evening and sang. Above their fields, they saw a new sky. A holiday came and they carried the baby to the park for a party. Sunlight surrounded them. Here we glimpse what our minds long turned away from. The great mutual blindness darkened that sunlight in the park and the sky that was new and the holidays. This monument says that one afternoon we stood here letting a part of our minds escape. They came back, but different. Enemy, one day we glimpsed your life. This monument is for you. Alan Friedlob is a well-known buffster who, among other things, is a photographer. I told Alan that I was going to explore the connection between poetry and prayer, and I asked him if he'd be interested in doing something similar with photography. So here he is now.
Good morning. Thanks. Prayer is a practice of attention, of presence. In photography, especially the kind of photography I like to do, visual storytelling and unposed portraits, I hope to find a way to touch something special in the everyday, to be fully present and to see life as it unfolds. Photography, like prayer, is highly contemplative and mindful. Every click of the shutter is like an amen, so be it. It is in that moment, and only in that moment, where we hold up a mirror and perhaps something more spiritual can be seen in the ordinary. Especially if you engage with people you don't know, you use your camera to show gratitude for that relationship, for connection with all that life reveals, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Photographers wait for the light and for a slight gesture or change of expression that will make that one photo show something of the truth within a person or a situation. They hope and pray and trust that out of the hundreds of pictures they may take, some will show the awe about what it means to be a human being, transforming the commonplace into something more transcendent of the human spirit. Now I'd like to just show you a few of my photos, and going through them, I realize that I kind of am drawn to the prayerful, so I've included some of those. The first photo shows the blessing of the bikes at the annual Oyster Run motorcycle rally in Anacortes. I was in the presence of a reality which I had no idea I would discover that day. Bikers as believers. Yet why would I not imagine that bikers pray for one another? We all seek safety, forgiveness, and love. Photography, like prayer, raises consciousness beyond stereotypes. The next photo is a procession of the Most Holy Virgin of Dolores in Xel-Há, Guatemala. I followed the procession for hours, witnessing the presence of the sacred among Mayan women and men. My camera opened me to glimpses of their faith, teaching me that presence is more than seeing. It's being fully there, letting something you do not understand reveal itself for further contemplation. And are not the religious societies of Xel-Há connected to the brotherhoods of bikers in Anacortes? Photography, like prayer, can reveal common ground and interconnection. The next photo, taken in 2019, shows Israeli soldiers praying within the Temple of the Patriarchs in the old city of Hebron in the West Bank, believed to be the burial place of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I remember it was disconcerting to see soldiers openly praying, yet where they are stationed is both synagogue and mosque, with a complex history of violent conflict. Two peoples cling to the same place, each claiming it as its own. Now, 5 years later, I wonder what the young men who now occupy and who believe they defend this holy place pray for. The last photo is taken in a restaurant in Vinales, Cuba. It shows a young woman in a quiet, reflective moment. You can see something vulnerable here, maybe a hint of sadness, introspection, or loneliness. A man sits outside the room with his back turned to her. How are they connected? When I look at this photo, I feel a sense of humility. In this moment, photography, like prayer, becomes a practice of empathy and compassion. I close with a photographer's prayer that I found. As I bring my subject into focus, make me sensitive to the qualities and virtues of others, that I may draw out the light, the beautiful, radiant belongings of their hearts. Help me to be an artist, collecting the beauty of every soul, the glow of youth, the gentleness, the laughter of tears of each life that is precious. Give me the perspective to see my photographer's art as a service to others, making life richer and more memorable. Between the lights and shadows, the ups and downs, and the rolling years, keep me from getting out of focus or off center, so that my life and work may be framed with dignity and colored with contentment. Thank you.
While I play my interlude today, it's going to be one of the most famous pieces in the cello repertoire, and we're all sick of it. This is the prelude from the first Bach suite for solo cello. It's so famous in the cello repertoire, it's often called the cello song, and we hate it. But while I'm playing, I want you to open your hymnal to hymn 353. It's Golden Breaks the Dawn, which is what I was playing during the gathering. And there's a video of Yo-Yo Ma playing this prelude, and this is why it's so famous. And it is perfectly visualizing the lyrics in this song, which is a brilliant testament of prayer saying what is, and then a second verse saying what we're going to do about it. What's the number again? 353.
Periodically, we have a little ritual we call milestones, in which essentially those who have something big going on in their lives acknowledge what is. I love it when we have a lot of people acknowledging what it is in their lives that they want held by this loving community. If everybody were to acknowledge what is and tell us how they felt about it and tell us what principles and commitments they bring to the moment, we would be here too long. And so, when we acknowledge what is, allow ourselves to be vulnerable in front of others, I think it invites us to conversation later. And so that's what I would invite you to do during Milestones today, is acknowledge what is and allow us to hold you in our hearts. And we'll also take it as an invitation for afterward to reflect with you, if you wish, about how that's impacting you and what principles, commitments, loves you bring to this moment so that you may remain open-hearted. Now, just like the men's group, it's not that the people who go to men's group aren't interested in sports and politics, but once you open those doors, it's very hard to talk about anything else. And so, even though clearly those things are on many of our minds right now, I invite you to approach this in a very personal way, in very few words. Imagine it's a poem, perhaps, a very short poem. I invite you to come up. There's a microphone here if you would like to speak of your poem, prayer, reality, and then drop a symbolic stone in the water, which might symbolize for you a letting go or an entering into, or whatever meaning you bring to this moment. I invite you to stand really close to each other. No gap there. Really close so you can keep, Lou? No gaps. Okay, thanks.
Breast cancer, cancer-induced menopause, small children. Thanks for holding me.
A milestone acknowledging that you're no longer young. In the last few months, I have had 2 hip replacements, so I'm now full of titanium. Acknowledging a milestone that I walked up here without benefit of my crutch or a wheelchair, but the support of this congregation. Thank you.
Out of a deep and abiding sense of hope and an abundance of caution, my girlfriend and I have moved up our wedding to next week. And we'll have a party for Buff really soon. Yes.
I'd like to invite those of you on Zoom to put into the chat what milestone you'd like me to share, and I will read these from the chat and drop a stone in the water. And if you'd like, include your name if you'd like me to say your name.
A dear friend has asked for prayers for her trans grandson who is suicidal again after the election.
I have so much joy to share. Rick's words are on the benches at Marine Park, and it should make everybody happy. And my son got married and bought a house in Klamath Falls, which is close to me compared to where he was. And I'm just full of joy about all that.
a bit of sorrow. Last Thursday, a 40-year friend of ours passed away at the beach with his current lady friend. She came into the room and he was unresponsive and they couldn't revive him.
Yes, I still believe that one day there will be world peace.
Sometime tomorrow, I will complete another circuit of the sun, independent of any direct connection to my mother.
I'm trying to live in joy as I deal with complicated grief. I lost in the last 14 months my mother, my father, my husband, and now my mother-in-law last week.
This is for my daughter, Olivia Lackland Henry, who was born and raised in this congregation. She's going to be graduating from the University of Montana in just under a month and then traveling to Latin America for a year rock climbing.
So hope, as I am trying to embrace my identity and let go of self-imposed restrictions.
Hi, I'm Mark. My ability to be truthful and vulnerable of many parts and private things in my life to the public has given me freedom and power and optimism.
Very recently, I became aware of a huge misunderstanding, which has left me very sad and trying to figure out how to deal with it.
My wife is enduring treatment for cancer, and it's sometimes difficult.
My name is Cleone Graham, I'm sorry, and I moved here a month ago after spending my whole life on the Atlantic Ocean. And I spent 2 weeks in severe depression, and it lifted yesterday. And it feels so good to not cry all the time, even though I'm crying. Thank you.
From Ted Williams. Ted celebrates and thanks Buff for all the love and support of me and my dear family as we move into a new and unknown future. Love you all. I'm going to drop a stone for Ted and family, and also for another to represent so many joys and sorrows and hopes and fears and dreams that we all carry and that we embrace now as one.
Thank you. So for those of you who are paying attention to your order of service, I am not Constance Ohana. My name is Grace Nyblade. I'm co-chair of Uplift, which is the team within this congregation whose goal is to uplift LGBTQ voices in this space. And it's been a tough week. So I'm going to try to give you Constance's words because she is traveling and had the space to write to you. Good morning. My name is Constance Ohana. I am a white-skinned transgender woman. She, her pronouns describe how I understand myself. I am fortunate to live and be seen and accepted as a woman in my community. Today, I want to talk about what happens to some members of the larger transgender community. During each year, organizations track the violence against transgender individuals and so much of that violence that ends in death. I've been involved in the Transgender Day of Remembrance ceremonies for the past few years. The ceremony is held on the 20th day of November. This is a somber event as we honor each person killed by saying their name one last time and giving a positive example of who they were. This year, 27 people have been murdered. 74% are people of color. 48% are Black transgender women. 63% were killed with a gun. 38% were killed by an intimate partner or family member. As horrific as their deaths are, remember that they were someone's beloved. They deserve to be held in love and compassion. I think about the recent violence here against the Bellingham High School student on October 22nd. And it's important to remember that we also remember another student in Oklahoma whose bullying actually led to their death. Next, Benedict was bullied in the bathroom at his school and died the next day. 37% of those murdered were misgendered when their deaths were reported. The misreported names affect the actual count. Also keep in mind that transgender people who die by suicide are not tracked and are not included in this count, and that number is very hard to find because frequently they are tracked by their dead names. Let us remember that violence is so often the result of fear of those who don't conform to our societies or our personal assumptions. The country that we thought would protect us is not the same country that we thought of just a few days ago. This time, we get to take a stand and support our transgender community. This fellowship has supported the LGBTQ community for so many years, and I feel seen and loved here. I look forward to the future as we stand side by side. Thank you. For those of you who are new, we encourage you to reach out and tell us what you need as support. We're going to have a brief meeting after coffee hour to figure out what our community wants to do to support the Bellingham High School student and to figure out what steps can be taken in our community to protect our kids. Thank you. 12 noon downstairs in the library. Thank you.
It just felt like what you were sharing, what Constance had written, was acknowledging what is, was acknowledging the pain that she and invited us to enter into, and also acknowledged her commitment, inviting us to bring our commitment to the situation. Even though it was a very straightforward statement in a way, it also had prayer-like qualities and seemed to end with a sense of vulnerability, which is another form of open-heartedness. So thank you. As the ushers come forward to receive your generosity today, know that we each bring our own resources, a variety of abilities to contribute in different ways, and we are grateful for whatever that may be and whatever form that may take.
Thank you all for your generosity. We're going to move toward the closing of the service, first with a song called Find a Stillness. It's number 352 in the gray hymnal. That's 352. For the closing words today, I'm going to read a poem I wrote a long time ago. It's called Lake Padden, and at the time I wrote it, Lake Padden was a major swimming area in Bellingham that had a lifeguard. The only problem was that people often got swimmer's itch when they went swimming in Lake Padden. Anyone can come here. God knows it takes no heroic effort. It's even within the city limits. A road goes by on one side with woods on the other, and at the southern end, there's a picnic area and a ball field. You could come here in the summer and share a swimmer's itch with half of the people in town. But think of a rainy day in November. The people driving by would have somewhere to get to, and no one would notice you, quiet, alone on the shore. The rain would be making all the circles that the surface of the lake could hold. You could think of other lakes and of the sound of voices coming over them. You could cup your hands and hold that sound and count all the names that you remember so well. Funny, isn't it, how your whole life fits into the little space between your hands? Now, let's get together in our concentric circles and sing our favorite song.
I think we need 3, actually.